Hey everyone, welcome to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast, the ultimate blueprint to self-love and inner peace. I'm your host, Danielle Van. As a cognitive behavioral therapist, a life coach to women, meditation teacher, and author, I've spent my life studying and learning from the stories that make us human. It's my passion and goal to help you shift your mindset and create a lifelong revolution to help you reach your greatest potential. As spring break and summer fastly approach, there seems to be ads for getting our summer bodies ready everywhere we turn. Stores are already shifting from winter clothes and into shorts and skimpy swimsuits. It's this time of year that most women truly dread. Why? Because their body image is not healthy. And as you may suspect, when we think about ourselves in a negative way, we tend to struggle across all aspects of our lives, especially in finding peace and self-love. So today I sat down with Erin Tennant to talk about how each of us can increase our self-concept and body image, how to create rewarding habits and behaviors when it comes to ourselves and food, cultivating a growth mindset around eating, and she even shares her story of growing up constantly on a diet and the steps she took to lose over 130 pounds, and she's kept it off. If you are ready to consciously make changes to how you look and feel, this is one conversation you want to hear from start to finish. So let's dive right in. The Get Your Life Together Girl podcast starts right now. You know, it's one thing to have full empowerment in your mind and in your emotions, but there's another element that we so often miss, and it is the physical element. I'm so excited to talk to Erin today. She is a true success story about using mind, body, and spirit and physical. And so, Erin, please introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, and let's get into your background story because it's pretty incredible.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I appreciate you having me on. I love podcasts. I love being on them. I love meeting people. I've met some of my most favorite people from being a guest on a podcast. Anyways, my name is Erin Tennant. I am the owner of Grow Well Coaching. You know, everyone's like, what do you call yourself? I guess the thing that I call myself, other than like a mom, a wife, a human being, just a regular, normal person, I'm a wellness coach, and for personal and professional wellness. Sometimes people like to call me a weight loss coach, a mindset coach. You know, my jam is sustainable weight loss, but we also work on a slew of other issues under wellness because we know there's so many things that impact our wellness. But some common themes that I work with my clients on is improving their body image, their self-concept, stress management. As a cognitive behavioral therapist like yourself, I live and eat and breathe working with my clients and myself to create rewarding habits and behavioral changes. That is key. That is, if you're struggling with something and you want to be done with it forever in your mind, that's the story, the narrative, you have to change the behaviors. In terms of mindset, we work on growing, cultivating, creating a growth mindset. So that is really the common themes that I see in my clients and throughout. And I love it. I love working with them. I love the experience and opportunity because I know firsthand from someone who has a coach myself, the power of coaching, the power of strengthening those mental muscles. So you can do the hard shit, like unlearning and learning, which are both very, very difficult things to do as adults.
Absolutely. And you came to this space because of your own personal story. Would you share some of that with us?
Yeah. So in a nutshell, grew up my whole life, and I'm a parent now, so no blame game, but just recognizing, being aware of my childhood. I didn't have the greatest role models for eating healthy, moving my body, emotional regulation, all sorts of things. I had a mom who suffered from bipolar disorder and personality disorder. My father, his coping mechanism was compartmentalizing. So I went to the safest version of both models, which is compartmentalizing.
Right.
But instead of feeling my feelings, instead of processing them, allowing myself to experience them in my body, I just avoided and resisted.
Right.
And I did it with food.
Right.
And I learned that as a child. And then as a result, no one really asked me, like, well, I don't think an adult should really ask a child, like, why are you overweight? But no
Right.
one really said, like, what's going on with you, or what's
Hmm.
happening, or
Hmm.
being, or maybe looking at their behaviors and saying, hey, should I change something? Should we do something? Should we start walking together? Should we start
Right.
cooking more together at home? No one offered that as a solution. The solution I was given is, at 8 years old, you need to go on a diet.
Yeah.
And so that's where it started. 8 years old, and I was put on my first diet, and that was the narrative of my life. You're overweight, you're not good enough, you need to fix it. And the only way to do it is through a diet. And that was very difficult for me because I love food. I love to
Hmm.
eat. I have always just had a really wonderful relationship with it and got a lot of comfort and pleasure from it.
Hmm.
And diets don't allow for that.
Right.
Diets
And
don't make space for that. So I
no.
failed at that repeatedly, and then would binge and shame cycle and diet and restrict. And it
Hmm.
started this back and forth. I finally, in my 30s, I'm in my late 30s, just said, I had enough. Here I have a husband who clearly has a healthy relationship with food, healthy weight, ideal weight. I have friends like this. This is not a me issue. If I want what they have, I have to figure out how to get that for myself.
Right.
And so I made a promise to myself that I was not going to diet. I was going to figure out how to eat and move my body in a way that would support weight loss and sustainable weight loss. Like, I would never have to do this shit the rest of my life, but I could
Hmm.
still enjoy food, and I could still get pleasure from it. And as a result of doing the work, figuring it out, being messy, all the things, I lost and have maintained over 130 pounds.
I
Best decision of
mean,
my life.
yeah, it's huge, right? That's a
Yeah.
huge amount to lose, and to do it where you have been sustainable in it. There's
Hmm.
something that you talked about in your story that I want to touch on, and it is the fact that no one ever came to you and said, "Hey, what's going on?"
Yeah.
This is a very interesting thing because a lot of times women will come in and they're sitting, in a space with me, and they have a really unhealthy image of themselves, and they have a really
Hmm.
terrible body image. They really can't wrap their minds around what it is that's going on with them.
Yep.
Food is an issue, whether it's eating too much or not enough, binging, purging,
Hmm.
all of the things, right? And we'll talk about their childhood. And that is something I hear so often. I was overweight, or someone made me feel overweight with their words and the way that they, handled themselves in front of me. And no one ever asked me what was wrong. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest crimes that we can commit as parents, right? It's like
Yeah.
no one ever says, "Hey, I see that maybe something's going on because the inside is coming out on the outside. What's going on?"
Modeling that behavior is so important. And then I
Yeah.
think the follow up to that, which I have a 6-year-old and my
Mhm.
daughter's 8. So this is a
Right.
very pivotal time, especially
Yes.
since as a child, I, at 8 years old, started to diet, and
Mhm.
not doing this with my kids.
Right.
No way, no how. But I think the biggest takeaway for me as a parent and raising 2 kids who I want to have healthy relationships with other people, food, external
Mhm.
factors, but most importantly, themselves.
Right.
I am working to teach my children, because I had to learn it as an adult.
Mhm.
What am I thinking?
Yeah.
How am I feeling? What
Yeah.
does sadness feel like in my body? And can I sit with that so I don't have to avoid or resist it
Mhm.
or react to it because I feel unsafe in that emotion?
Right. And that's huge. I'm a mother of
Yeah.
3 myself, and it's one of those things, and we have to remember that everything that we do is a model for our children.
Mm, mm-hmm.
And if we have an unhealthy relationship with the mirror, with ourselves, with our plates, we will show it, even if it's not intentional. They will
Mm-hmm.
pick up on what's going on. You also said the word diet, one of the biggest buzzwords ever, right? No one
Yep.
does really well on a diet. Can you lean into that real quick, and let's have a conversation about that word
Yeah.
and the mental
Um,
part of it?
I think there's two definitions. There's like the diet, like how you eat and what you eat, kind of your food uniform, I like to call, which I learned from
Mhm.
Elizabeth Sherman, who's an amazing health coach that I worked with. And, that's really the food that you choose to fuel your body with. And that's
Right.
your diet. That's what it looks like. Then there are people who go on diets
Mhm.
to lose weight. And that's the diet that I'm going to be, I think we're going to dive into, is
Right.
this industry that is really targeted women, but targets men targets young adolescents and young adults, and really saying there is something wrong with you if you don't look like this, or if you don't have this number on the scale. And the only way to fix it is going on a form of a diet, a restriction.
Right.
Can I tell you something? The way I lost weight was shifting my mindset from restriction to constraint, from what I can't have to what I can have, and what do I want, filtering it through that lens of what do I want to eat? When do I want to eat it? Why do I want to eat it? To fuel my body and provide me pleasure, because food can serve multiple types of hunger: physical hunger, emotional hunger. I consider emotional hunger anything that's not physical, biological hunger. It's that, oh, I'm at a birthday party and there's cake and it looks good and I love sugar, so I'm going to try the cake. I'm not really physically hungry. I ate lunch an hour ago, but I'm going to indulge in this because I get a hit of dopamine when I eat, and that's okay because I can regulate that. And I trust myself to do that. That's very different than I can never have this again. Yeah. This makes me fat. This is bad. This is a good food I should be eating. This is a bad food. I wiped my brain clean of all that nonsense and really advocated for how I want my relationship and my mindset and my emotions to look like in terms of what I was eating and why and when and how and all those questions. And I think people can do that at any time. They can opt out and say, you know what? I don't want to play this game anymore. How do I want to eat to have the best quality of my life? And what does that look like for me?
You said a word that is so imperative. And I think the beginning, I know the beginning of all of this transformation, and it's trust. Do I trust myself enough? And the answer generally is no. I do not trust myself. Let's talk about how we begin to build that trust and how we then transfer from what you said, the diet, this idea, to restriction, to the uniform. I love that idea. This is the food uniform. So how do we begin to build that trust in your mindset?
My process and what I've seen from my clients and being in the coaching community and world is that there's multiple ways to begin to trust yourself. For me, the way that works best is a formula of self-awareness and self-regulation.
Yeah.
You need to start paying attention to what your thoughts are.
Yeah.
And start questioning that and curious, not in a, why am I thinking that way? Or, oh, I shouldn't be thinking that way. Or, what's that thought about?
Right.
Where did that come from? Is that something that when I was a kid, I was flipping through teen magazines and all I saw were very thin bodies and, teen Vogue, and that's what I've been conditioned and exposed to? Or is this really something I truly believe in, feels good to me? The awareness of, like I said, what does boredom, what does anxiety, what does fear feel like in your body? Because when we are willing to feel all the spectrum of the emotion, the good, the bad, the ugly, the positive, negative, the more useful, less useful emotions, whatever they may be, you can really do anything. Because a lot of us don't do the hard thing because we fear the feeling of the emotion.
Right. And we've been told that we shouldn't sit with our emotions, that we have to plow through them. And if it doesn't feel good, you push it to the side. And that's when we begin to pick up the habits to push them aside.
And I did that with food. I avoided and resisted with food all the time. Okay, I was bored, let me eat. Oh my gosh, I'm sad, let me eat. Even happy, even really, really great feelings. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm so happy. Let's eat.
Let's celebrate. Yeah.
Let's celebrate
Absolutely.
and eat. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of women have that go-to, right? And we don't want to talk about the fact that you shouldn't have that go-to because like you said, food can be pleasure. And so how can we change from this is the standard for all emotions to this is what's fueling my body and making me feel my best in both emotional regulation, physical, all of it. How do we get there?
A lot of my clients, and I know this firsthand, many of us get obsessive about food. It's the one thing that truly provides us comfort. It's on the top of our list because it's so easy, it's accessible, it's normalized.
Right.
It's normalized. So it's okay. It's not like shooting up heroin or getting sloshed to the point you're walking your kids home from school and you're slurring your words. Like,
Right.
it's okay. People are more accepting of using food as a resource to comfort. And I want to be very clear. I decided that I was going to engage in that behavior whenever I want. So I still emotionally eat probably every day at some point.
Right.
Mostly after dinner because I'm tired, I'm exhausted, and I love something sweet. And I allow myself to do that. But 80% or more of the time, I am eating to fuel my body. I'm eating a food uniform of fiber, lots of fruit, lots of vegetables, lots of complex carbs. I'm eating protein, I'm eating healthy fats, and I'm doing it to fuel my body and my brain.
Yeah.
Both. And then I allow and I only eat foods I like. Like, I hate grapefruit. I don't know. I can't. I just can't with grapefruit. So you will never see me eat grapefruit, but I do find other foods that fuel my body. And I find food that I like to eat. I look forward to eat. I get excited to eat. I'm motivated to eat. So I think people have to decide, okay, do they want to put these really high expectations that they're never going to indulge in a piece of cake? They're never going to have ice cream in the summertime with their kids. They're never going to sit on the couch and watch their favorite show and, have a little snack.
Right.
That you got to decide. It's your life. You get to decide how you want to live it. For me, I want to engage in that behavior, but I have to trust myself, like we talked about. So I had to start becoming aware of the behaviors that were keeping me in an overweight body and an overweight mentality. And I really had to rip off the Band-Aid and look at that wound. And that wound was food kept me safe. And it will always be able to keep me safe. That I think, that's what I think. It's not really keeping me safe. But I now trust myself. And this was years. This was not like a 6-week, 90-day program. This has been years of doing things and trusting myself and hiring professionals to help me really build that trust so I can be around food. Like, if you go to my house, people come in my house and they're like, I thought I would expect like no sugar, no processed food. I was like, I have Cheez-Its, I have, gummy bears, we have Oreos, we have candy buckets, we have all that nonsense. We also have a ton of fruit. We have yogurts, we have cheese sticks, we have, whole grains, quinoa. My kids, they eat vegetables, they eat fruits, they have, if they want a snack after school, they eat the apple and they eat the Doritos. For dessert, they may have some grapes and some candy.
Right.
Or cucumbers and candy. They can have both. So I think it's really about taking ownership and authority and responsibility. And I don't really like this word, but I haven't figured out a different word, and maybe you could help me with this.
Yeah.
It's kind of like getting out of victim mentality.
It is. That's exactly what I was about to talk about, was safety, because you mentioned that, food was safety. And we have to think about how that happens. And a lot of people don't understand. We talk about it with our emotions, and it seems to be an easy leap for a lot of people. We understand that the brain is, its number one job is safety. And so we can get behind that, right? It's like, okay, that makes sense. But we don't think of our habits as the predictor to the safety. And so when we have a lot of chaos in our childhood, we have to find something that gives the brain the safety mechanism. And it's in our habits. It's like, okay, well, what is the one thing that I know I can use right now to calm my nervous system, to calm my brain, which is seeking safety? We take it in, whatever it is. For some people, it's over exercising. For other people, it's food. For some, it's anger, right? We use our emotions in that way. So, a lot of people will come in and they're like, yeah, I don't understand why this is my go-to. And I'm like, because you're trying to keep yourself safe.
Yeah.
And that is such a hard thing for people to understand. How could I go to that? It's not safe, but that's what you told your brain. That's what your brain thinks. So as that rises, right, that need for safety rises, you have to fill it somehow.
Yeah.
Right?
And you have to figure out and I think the biggest question I always got in the habit of asking myself is that if I had a craving or urge and I knew it wasn't out of physical hunger, it was emotional hunger, what need was not being met?
Yeah, there it is.
And a lot of the time it was safety.
Right.
Or it was comfort because I was exhausted. I was tired from a long day of work and kids and all the things and just busy schedule and overthinking and all the things, anxiety, stress. And so I had to ask myself, okay, I've now identified my need. Do I want to use food or not to fill that need? Sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. But then I have to do a third filter problem is if I say yes, then how can I eat to be aligned with my values? How can I eat in integrity of being a healthy individual who is either engaging in weight loss, maintaining weight loss, whatever it may be? Maybe it's something with a biomarker. Maybe it's someone who wants to manage diabetes. Maybe it's someone who wants to get their cholesterol under control. It doesn't have to be weight. Or somebody who is training for a marathon, someone who is trying to do something for themselves physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever that is. But how can I do it so I can maintain my integrity while I'm pursuing X, Y, and Z? And I had to answer that and feel good in my decision before I engage in the behavior. And that requires pause. We don't like to pause. We live in a society of go, 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 do, more. It's not enough.
Right.
And so we have to train ourselves to really pause. And if you ask anybody who is people in your life who you think are truly successful, got it together, and if you listen to some of these people and some of their most successful habits, you hear they wake up early, they work out, they eat healthy, all the things, but they take time to pause and get curious, ask themselves questions, and feel good in their decisions. They're not making decisions from a place of urgency or a place of unsafety. They're meeting their needs before.
Absolutely. What an amazing tool that you just handed over. So ladies, if you didn't catch those questions and those markers, go back, rewind for just a second and write them down. And you said something that is important to point out. You said, do I want to be comfortable? And comfort, at the baseline of comfort, is safety. So, you have to be safe in order to get into a comfortable place. And if you can answer those questions, like you said, and it meets the integrity, what happens is control, mental and emotional regulation, and you're out of that victim mode that you talked about. A different word for victim mode is the flip side of it would be I'm choosing ownership, right? So authority, right? I always say governorship, right? Are you taking
that?
Are you using your governorship to really own the experience? I love that tool. I love those questions. And it is so imperative to match up urge, safety, and need. We all know that food's a need, right? Where do you find that most people trip up from the need to the desire?
For me, I believe it's the lack of the pause. Our brains, a lot of the time, like we said, are running, on full speed. It's all over the place. And we believe that our brains lead us.
Right.
But we can pause and actually take the leash off, so to speak. And we could say, oh, no. Let's stop and have a conversation. Let's stop and check in. Like your best friend, your child, your husband, your spouse, your loved one. Just check in with yourself. We're taught that's narcissistic. It's you should be thinking of others all the time. Well, guess what? For me to be the best mom, wife, friend, colleague, coach, whatever I am to other people, whatever roles I have to play, I have to be good with myself. When I am not in a healthy relationship with myself, I am not in a healthy relationship with my kids. And that doesn't mean I can't experience negative emotion. That's not me, oh, I'm happy with myself. That's me meeting my own needs. That's what I'm talking about. That's me understanding, oh, I'm having a lot of anxiety today. So today might be a really good day for me to get outside, go take a walk. Today might be a good day to notice that I may want to comfort myself with food because the anxiety feels like a lot.
Right.
and I can figure out what foods I want to eat to feel good and not beat myself up. Maybe it's having a conversation with your inner critic. Maybe
Hmm.
it's calling on someone in your support system to help you kind of center. Maybe it's meditation for some people, journaling. Like, find your practice, find your way to ground yourself and come back to self.
100%. And if you struggle with the pause, I want to give you just a little bit of insight of how to actually get into that space. And it's
Hmm.
different than you think, right? Pausing is actually a very simple tool, but it does take
Yep.
practice. However, get to know whether or not you are an emotional thinker or a rational thinker. And that's a big part of this, right? So if you're an emotional thinker and you're responding to stress and you're looking for safety, you're going to go to whatever it is until the emotion is met and it's taken
Hmm.
its full roller coaster ride, right? So
Yep.
that's where we go through the bag of chips and we didn't even realize we were eating them. But if you're a
Yep.
rational thinker, okay, I can examine the moment. I can get down to just the facts of the moment. And then I can look at how is this leading me into my emotional, self.
Yeah. And if you're an emotional person and you steer the vehicle yourself based on your emotions,
Mhm.
one thing I like to do, because I feel like I sometimes can be rational naturally, and then sometimes I can be emotionally. I mean, it's not like
Sure.
one or the other. I can do
Right.
both.
Mhm.
So if I am running on heavy emotion and that's driving my decisions, I like to just, do something that I enjoy doing, sit down, pop some music, and just for a couple minutes, even in the shower, go take a shower, go
Yeah.
grab a coffee. And while you wait in line or you're in the pickup line to get your coffee, think about what the feelings are and what the facts are about the
Mhm.
situation and separate them.
Right. Yeah.
Just be aware that there are facts. Those are things you can prove in a court of law. Like, my husband called me at 3 o'clock. That's the fact. We had a conversation. That's the fact. He was condescending. That was my feeling.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
can't prove it.
Right.
That's my feeling, and get to know that feeling and
Yeah.
get curious about that feeling. Well, why do I think he was being condescending? Well, his tone of voice. Did I ask him? Did I tell him, hey, I'm getting a condescending tone? Is that your intention?
Right.
Instead of just being quiet and going about my day thinking my husband was being condescending to me. Those little things we don't realize compound and compound and compound. And no wonder you found yourself on the couch eating a whole bag of chips,
Mhm.
and then you're upset with yourself. You're angry because you just went with how you felt. You
Right.
never stopped to just question.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yeah.
call those discovery questions, right? And we use them in interpersonal conversation. What am I feeling? What are the facts, like you just talked about? I talk about that so often.
Yeah.
And what are those facts leading me to believe? And then matching the emotional self to all of that. So important. When we start getting into a space where we have, somewhat control over that,
Mhm.
it still takes a bit of process to
Mm.
move into habit.
Yeah.
So, how would you lead someone who now says, I've been listening to this podcast, or I've been doing the work, or I've been working with a therapist, coach, whatever, and now I'm ready. I think I have enough mental and emotional strength to really dive into this. Where would we start?
So if you're looking at creating a rewarding habit or behavioral change, I would get very clear on what you're doing now.
Mm,
And I would just try to do 1% better. And
mhm,
what that means to me is, when I started losing weight, I decided, hey, the people around me that I look up to, that I admire, I consider role models, have this really great relationship with food and their body, and they're at
mhm,
an ideal weight. They're moving around a lot. They're not necessarily at the gym exercising, but they're moving their bodies.
mhm.
So my goal is to move my body 30 minutes intentionally a day.
Right.
And I was moving it zero, like
Mm,
zero. I was, okay, I'm going to go to the couch. I'm going to go to my desk. But it wasn't like, oh, well, let me get some vacuuming in, or let me go on a walk. Let me
mhm,
stretch, anything like that. So 30 minutes every day. Great. Well, I noticed I wasn't doing 30 minutes. I was doing 10. I was doing
mm.
15. And immediately I wanted to quit. Oh, you're not good enough. The inner critic came in. You can't even get 30 minutes. And what's wrong with you?
Right.
And I had an aha moment. And I said, you know what? I'm going to work with ranges.
Mm.
So if I'm doing 10 minutes every day, like I can do 10 minutes, but I want to do 30. So my goal is to get 10 to 30 minutes every day and really exploring and playing around with what I like and not thinking what I have to do to lose the weight, but what
Right.
I want to do to lose the weight. So it was a lot of walking, it was yoga, it was stretching, it was playing with my kids. I was getting into the habit of cleaning more.
Mm.
And so I was like, okay, cleaning counts. Cleaning is a great
Yeah.
way to move your body. Organizing closets in my house, like I said, taking my dog for a walk. So really pairing them with household chores and duties and roles, since I also transitioned from working outside the house to the home.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think giving yourself a range, don't back yourself into a corner.
Right.
Sometimes we get so stuck. You have to go to the gym for 30 minutes and 3 times a week, and it's got to be your best workout and you got to sweat.
Right.
No, you're going to set yourself up to fail. So
Yeah.
don't do that. Give yourself ranges, give yourself flexibility, and really get clear. Spend the time thinking, what are your non-negotiables?
Mm-hmm.
My real non-negotiable was I wanted to move my body intentionally every day.
Right.
That was it.
Yeah. And if ranges don't work for you, because again, we all show up in different ways, another way to do it that I've often led women into when we're talking about anything is
Yeah.
if you know that you can do 10 minutes of something, the next, say 4 days later, add 2 minutes. That's it.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
2 minutes. Like you got an extra 12, right?
Yeah.
That's all. And then 4 days later, another 2.
Yep.
And build everything by 2 minutes, because if we look at the scheme of the hour, that's 1% better.
Yeah.
So, just 2 minutes at a time.
Yeah. And that's, now that I've gotten into the fitness world and working out, that's what we call like progressive overloading. So
Right.
when you look at bodybuilders and people who lift weights, they don't go into it saying, I'm going to lift 300 pounds. It's
Yeah.
going to be crazy. They start where they're at. They meet themselves where they're at. They do what they can, and progressively they improve
Right.
1% better. And they look at the exercise, whether it's frequency, intensity, density. They look at, okay, well, I have all these options for improvement. It doesn't have to be this one way. So
Right.
spending the time to pause and figuring out all the ways you can set yourself up to succeed. And that sometimes is not natural for our brain to do. We have to actively and intentionally do it. It will tell us all the ways we'll fail. So you know what? Take those, say, thank you, brain. Now, how do I flip them? If I'm in watching Stranger Things and it's the upside down world, okay, well, you're not going to be able to walk for 10 minutes today because it's going to rain.
Mm-hmm.
So what can I do to walk 10 minutes while it's raining?
Right. Up and down the stairs of your house if you have them, right?
Whatever. A rain jacket, an umbrella.
Right.
What does that look like? You tell me. You tell me the best idea that you come up with, all the ideas, and figure it out.
When we're talking about that and getting to the space where we're flipping it, what we're really flipping, and we have to be very honest and very clear about what it is. It's a thought, yes, and we're connecting the emotion to the thought, but what we're really flipping is the excuse. That is so important to witness, right? Every time we tell ourselves we can't, we shouldn't, we're not able to, it is excuse and it is barrier. Now, let's get out of the toxic positivity bullshit that we hear so often, right? Well, if you can't, you just should. No. But if you can get into a space where you witness the excuse, okay, that's making me feel like I can't. Whose voice is this? Is this my voice? Is this the voice of, my mom from when I was a child? Is it my dad? Is it my sister? Whoever it is, do I believe that to be my truth? Now let's look at the excuse.
Yeah.
Is the excuse really there? Does it hold weight and value? Not really. Okay, what can I do with it? I'm going to get the raincoat. I'm going to go outside.
Yeah.
Right.
And honor that excuse too, because
yes,
I love my excuses because it's just my brain trying to tell me you don't feel safe right now.
Yeah.
There's something going on. It's just a little messenger telling me, hey, there's something that is happening for you that you maybe don't fully recognize, you're unconscious to. So what do you need to do today? Are you just anxious, tired? Are you beating yourself up? Like, what do you need to address? So I actually love when I get an excuse because it's an indicator that there's something happening for me that I'm not aware of. And I get to decide what that is, what that looks like, how I want to proceed with that.
5,000
how I
percent.
interpret that. And so
Yes.
it's useful. So again, not saying, oh, well, just do it. You know,
Mhm.
cultivate, figure out, like push through it, work harder. No,
Right.
stop and really listen to that and figure that
Mhm.
out, because, maybe there is something there that you need to honor, and you can still show up in your value, in your integrity, in your intentions. It just may look a little different than you thought.
Yeah. You just brought the whole point of what I was saying home. That's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I
And
get
so
it. I've lived and
yeah.
eaten, breathed it. I get it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's so important to, like you just said, witness it, honor it, and then move through it.
Yep.
So important. So we know that we have to get the mindset correct. We have to look at our intentionality and our goal and
Mhm.
focus. We have to begin to do everything in the span of time in which we know we are comfortable in. I want to also say, I know that the people that listen to this podcast have heard me say it ad nauseum, but if you're new here,
Yep.
you should know that safety that we're talking about in the brain doesn't always mean safety. It's not the traditional definition of safety, right? So what's safe to you may actually be a negative. And you
Yeah.
have to honor it and witness it and know I'm doing something bad, but my brain, for me, not, necessarily bad,
Mhm.
but something that's not supporting me. And my brain agrees that this is the way that I should operate. So
Yeah.
therefore, this is the definition of safety. So important to recognize that safety doesn't always mean safe.
Yeah.
So,
Eating on the couch, binging Netflix like I used to do
mhm,
for Real Housewives, whatever it was. And,
yeah.
an hour or two would go by and I wasn't really eating anything terrible. It wasn't like Doritos and pizza, but
Mhm,
nuts add up,
yeah.
crackers add up, cheese adds up. And when you are just constantly filling the void and you're resisting that constant emotion, and it's just stuff and stuff and stuff and stuff, it adds up.
Right. Yeah.
And so really checking in and saying, yeah, you can sit and watch TV and eat and go on autopilot, but if you're going to do that, you have to agree to do that.
Right.
Don't think that's your only option. You have to take responsibility for it and the consequences of that. And sometimes consequences aren't necessarily bad. Sometimes,
Mhm,
because I did that for a while. I still do that sometimes, where I sit and I emotionally eat and I accept the consequences. And they're not always bad. Sometimes I meet my need. And
right.
I'm like, okay, there was a bowl of popcorn and some M&Ms and I was done,
Right.
instead of all of the food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we get to that point where, okay, we have accepted that we can have the yin and yang, right, of
Yeah.
all things, how do we get into a space where we change the mindset of it and get into living this new uniform?
For me, it was about filling my brain with useful and helpful information.
Yeah.
So for me, what that looks like is reading podcasts. I
Hmm.
decided to learn to teach myself self awareness.
Yeah.
For some people, maybe listening to this podcast, it may be hiring a coach. It may be, there's excellent resources and books out there
Mhm.
about how to start leaning into a practice, a daily practice of self awareness. And once you do it, I will tell you, like, I don't really think about it that much. I
Mhm.
just do it naturally. Like every day I get in the shower, it's like, okay, what am I thinking? How am I feeling? What's on the agenda today? What's
Right.
bothering me? What am I looking forward to? What's making me anxious?
Right. Yeah.
Just kind of checking in. What are
Right.
you worried about today? I tend to worry. I tend to be anxious. Those are really driving factors. So I just check in. What am I anxious and worried about? It doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. I'm an anxious and worried kind of person. So I just check in with
Mhm.
that. What are you anxious about? What are you worried about? What do you want to do for yourself? What do you want to make? How do you want to take care of yourself today? Okay, well, I want to get my movement in. My non negotiable is my walk every day with my dog.
Right.
From there, I want to make sure I'm eating consistently to fuel my body and to fuel my brain. So
Mhm.
I have the energy to work, to mom, to wife, to physically move my body in the gym, to create healthy biomarkers inside my body, and to have the energy to feel whatever comes up,
Right.
because that takes energy.
It does. It does. I
So
love,
finding your version, finding your practice of what works for you, of how to build that self-awareness. There's so, and a lot of times I've read things and or I've heard something, I'm like, what the are they talking about?
exactly.
Get curious about that. And just because you're like, I don't know, I'm having some resistance, I'm having some
Mhm.
objections or some negative feelings towards it. Well, ask yourself, how could you make that work for you?
Right. Yeah.
And maybe it's not doing that exact same thing, but what can you take of value that they're telling you this works for me?
Mhm.
How can you make it work for you? And maybe it's not doing it at all. Maybe it's just
Mhm.
simply making a small modification. Maybe it's just practicing rep over rep over rep, exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. When you get into that space where you begin to question and you learn, what you're really doing at the core of all of this is challenging your brain and your values and your beliefs. And we
Yep.
get into a place where what I learned in the past may no longer be serving me. And I have the opportunity in this moment to redefine, to let go, to change, to even sort of manipulate a little
Yeah.
bit the belief and values so it works in your current life. That's what's so
Hmm.
important. Does this work in my current life? Because we do that all the time. We do it
Yeah.
very naturally. You also said something I want to point out, and I hope that everyone heard it in the way that I did. And even if you have moments where you're anxious or you're a
Hmm.
worrier or whatever, you said that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me.
No.
Everyone sit in that for just a hot second. Seriously, sit in that. Just because I have this experience, just because I have this thought, this trauma, this emotion, does not mean I am broken. Doesn't
No.
mean that there's something wrong with me. It just means that's what is. Now, what
Because
the hell
you
am I
are,
going to do with it?
yeah. Well, here was one of my biggest ahas and breakthroughs that I feel really helped me heal
Mm,
and move to the next step of my growth and self-development was I am not my thoughts and feelings.
yeah,
First of all, my brain produces, you know, thousands. Some people say hundreds of thousands. I don't know. But sum it up, a lot of thoughts that I'm aware
yeah,
of and not aware of. It's an organ.
right,
It is a part of my body.
right.
I also identify it. The difference is, with this organ, I also like interpret my experience with it. So I feel
Yeah,
very connected to it, like it's part of my soul,
yes,
but it really isn't.
right,
So if you can understand that your brain is just a tool, like your fingers, it serves
mhm,
a purpose, just like your toes, and that you are not your brain,
right.
you can then have a relationship with your brain differently, and
Hmm.
you are not your feelings. So my anxiety and my emotion, I welcome it, I experience it,
Hmm.
and then I let it go and it comes back.
Right.
It's a friend. It has
Yeah.
to be a friend because that's what it is. So I am not the anxiety, I
Hmm.
am not the overwhelm. It's just the way my body interprets my thoughts.
Right.
And the
Brilliant.
more I practice that, the more I trust myself to be anxious and overwhelmed. And I don't have to rely on food. I don't have to rely on alcohol. I don't have to rely on, you know, scrolling social media and shopping and all the things. Do I
Mm,
engage in those behaviors? Yes, of
right.
course. But I'm not sitting here regretting it. I'm not sitting here saying, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be doing something else. It's like, no, I've had a long day. I'm tired. I really want to spend the next 10 minutes looking at Instagram reels and laughing my ass off. That's what
Right.
I want to do. And I'm okay with it versus I shouldn't be doing it. And that leads to a 3-hour binge.
Hmm.
Those two
Yeah,
are very different.
they are. Allowance is huge. Permission is massive. So where
Yeah.
can you lean in and choose what works for you? And just like you said, it's presence and it's choice
Yeah.
and it's activeness, awareness.
Yep.
So we move through all of these things and we start beginning to change the habit. A lot of people stop dead in the tracks about 30 days later because this is too damn hard. I'm not
Yeah.
interested in this
Yeah.
anymore. I feel, and I don't want to feel anymore. This is much more work than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be so hard?
Expect it. Like we
Mm-hmm.
just said, welcome it.
Mm-hmm.
When we are in those lows, those moments of doubt, we're not trusting ourselves, we
Yeah.
fear, we worry, we're should I be doing this? Like
Right.
you could literally quit.
Yeah.
That is the moment of growth. That is, it's not up here. When you're riding the high, that's not like, that is because you've gone through the valley and you're at the peak. If you want to get to that peak, you have to be willing to find value in your lows, in what we describe as negative, because those emotions are so necessary for you to, like I said, practice feeling, trusting yourself to feeling, and understanding what they are telling you.
Right. Yeah.
And practice interpreting them. And it's not a one-time deal. And someone who I love and admire in, therapeutic and coaching spaces is Dr. Kristen Neff. Self-compassion is everything.
Yes. Yeah.
The people who you think are most successful, or have it all, no problems, are happy, like everything's just perfect. You probably have your head up their ass because they're human beings like everybody else.
Yeah.
They struggle, all the things. And the important thing is to recognize that he or she or whomever, they have the same emotion.
Right.
Now, it might be caused by something. It might, maybe they'll describe it a little differently and have a different experience and timeline, but we are all human beings. So we all feel the same emotion. We all go through these highs and lows. And the most successful people welcome those lows because it's part of reality. And when you stop arguing with reality, you give up some of that control that you never had control over on the first place. And then you can put that control where it actually is useful, where it's like, okay, control myself to sit with the emotion as long as possible.
Right.
Control myself to focus on the curiosity of what does that emotion mean? What patterns, why, all the things. That's where your control is, in your interpersonal relationship.
And response, all of it. Yeah. Beautiful way to describe that. And you mentioned self-compassion. You have the ability to actually turn this light on when it's been really dark inside of you.
Yeah.
And know that I can offer myself kindness and know that I am going to screw this up. And there's something for me in the screw up. And I can honor that. And I can love myself through it. And hold space and hold intentionality in it, and be
all of
okay.
it.
I'm okay. That's compassion.
And you don't have to master all that. If you're like taking notes right now, just take a breath, take a moment, and say, what do I want to do for myself today that feels good?
I actually this morning had that conversation with one of my ladies that I've had for a while. She's like, I need to do this, this, and this, and this, but I only want to do this. Then you should probably only do what you have space for. But I have all this other stuff to do. I'm like, no, ma'am, no, because you're going to push yourself to a place where the only this becomes the breaking point. And so get to a space where you can allow, what do I need? What do I want? How do I want to feel? How am I going to get there? Those are those 4 questions that I ask all the time. And they're the markers to everything. It doesn't matter what you're doing.
The more that you can empower yourself and practice that skill set, the easier this would be. Where do you want to start today? But you have to decide. You are the authority, and no coach, no therapist, no other person will tell you what's best for you other than you.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to listen and to honor that.
Women will come in and say, fix me. And I said, I can't.
No.
I can't. One, you're not broken. So we're not fixing anything like that. So we're going to throw that out the door. But 2, I can't fix you. I can give you the tools and the guidance, and how you interpret them and use them in your life is the fix. And that's it. If there was something that you wanted women to know that is, either a misnomer for many people, or we just don't have the information, what would that be?
Oh, there's so many things. I think for me, the biggest takeaway from my entire experience and journey and working with my clients and on myself is that be willing to question everything you think you know. If you can start spending time on, okay, I have this urge and desire to lose weight. Let's just use that as an example. Get very curious. Is this because I think I should be healthy? Well, Am I healthy? Have I gone to the doctor? Have I
Right.
checked my biomarkers? What are the measurements I'm using and I feel good and to check my health?
Right.
That's the first thing, or it's like, do I want to lose weight because I think I'm going to be happier on the other side? And let me tell you something. I still have the same thoughts that I had when I was overweight. I just now know how to relate to them differently. I
Yeah.
now know what to do with them versus just automatically believe them and
Mm-hmm.
then react to them, which is avoiding or resisting whatever emotion came up, and
Yeah.
then going to food or going to alcohol or whatever it may be, my
Mm-hmm.
perfectionist tendencies or my people pleasing tendencies.
Right.
So be willing to really just like look at everything you think and question that, because when I realized my weight loss for me was about opening doors for
Mm-hmm.
me physically,
Right.
emotionally, mentally, spiritually, all the things that make up my wellness. It was about a quality of life, not because of the size of my body. That
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the true issue. It was my thoughts about myself
Yeah.
in that body, which I realize I have those thoughts now.
Yeah.
So it had nothing to do with the body. It had
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do. That's just a self concept that I have committed to working on at no matter weight, whatever age,
Mm-hmm.
whatever season I am in my life. I'm committed on working that because that's my value. That's how I create that value for myself, is being willing to have that interpersonal relationship so I can, I don't want to say be the best version or the healthiest version. I can just allow myself to be me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to try to control it and dictate it and be the puppeteer. It's like I
Right.
give myself more space and grace to be who I am and step into that.
Yeah. We have to remember that the way we see ourselves, the way that we communicate and relate to ourselves will always be different than how anyone outside of us sees ourselves.
Yeah.
And when we take this journey to get mentally, emotionally, and physically healthier, right? I didn't say better, I said
Yeah.
healthier in a wellness, mindset, in a wellness lifestyle. We will always have this space where what's happening inside has to catch up to what is happening outside. And this is one of the biggest struggles that I see so
Yeah.
often, is that women have a hard time identifying with who they see in the mirror after they've done all this work. And if that's you, just know it takes time. It's
Takes
okay.
time.
It's about the relationship with the thought, the feeling, and the perception. Is
Yep.
that worn out? Is it time to shift it again? So
Yeah.
know that will happen. Well, I know that you've listened to this podcast, so you know what's coming next.
Yes. Yes.
We always end with 3 gratitudes. So what are your
Yeah.
3?
I'm really grateful to be here. I am grateful to have the opportunity, the technology, the time, the space to connect with the listeners, even though I don't see their faces, but I know we're connecting. I know I'm speaking to you and you're speaking to me with your thoughts and feelings that you're holding on to.
Yeah.
And 3, so ready just to hang with family and friends and just chillax a little bit. So,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm.
What about you?
Beautiful.
I want to hear what your
You know what?
what
No one
yours
has
are.
ever asked me my 3. You know what? In all of these, in this almost 150 episodes, no one has ever asked me my
Are
3.
you serious? I want to know yours. Will you
Oh,
share with us?
wow. Yeah, I'll be happy to
Okay.
share. So,
Oh,
I actually am a gratitude person and I
okay.
list them every morning. So, my first one would be that yesterday, my beautiful 10-year-old son had an opportunity to meet with somebody who could really help him change the trajectory of his education. And I felt so grateful when he came to me last night and said, I feel confident. And that was a huge gratitude for me. So that's one.
Awesome.
2 is the fact that I do get to connect with people like you and the listeners and the emails and the DMs and the visits to the website where you're making comments and letting me know how impacted you are. It literally changes my desire to show up every day. And so I
Mhm.
cannot thank you. I have such deep gratitude for that. And three would be that I get up every morning and show up. It is a
Mhm.
pleasure. There was a time in my life that I certainly did not operate my life like that. So
Yeah.
it's an honor to be able to wake up in the morning and go, okay, I get to experience this day. So those are my
That's
three.
so cool. And I love, and I gotta highlight this because this is what I'm just in awe of. Here are two people, two completely different strangers. One, you love gratitude. You lean into it.
Yeah.
It like excites you. Me, I have a little resistance. It kind
Mhm.
of feels like forced and a little icky to me, but I
Yeah.
understand the value of it. I understand like the scientific value, like how it
Right.
changes our, biochemistry and everything,
Yeah.
but we still are speaking the same language. It doesn't have to
Absolutely.
be me, it doesn't have to be you. Just we feel empowered in what works for us. And that's what this
Exactly.
work, if you're interested and curious, that's what finding your version of this work will do for you.
Yeah. Thank you, Erin. I
It's
can't thank you
awesome.
enough. I know. Thank
Yeah.
you for your time, for your energy, for the
Same to you.
information, sharing your story. I feel like we can walk away and end with a great sense we all do speak the same language
Yeah.
and we can live our best lives. Erin is so right. Each of us does have the power to make decisions for ourselves and to take full ownership of not only the way we eat, but how we live. The minute we do, we consciously learn to live as our best selves. If you're interested in learning more about or from Erin, you can connect with her on Instagram or Facebook at Grow Well Coaching, or you can check out her website at thegrowwellcoach.com. Thank you so much for listening to the Get Your Life Together Girl podcast. If you've enjoyed these tips for bettering your life and are seeking daily inspiration and additional tools and tips, you can follow me on social media at Get Your Life Together Girl on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok. You can also visit the blog or my website at getyourlifetogethergirl.com. Be sure to check the website to get all of the information about newest courses, some merch, and even our women's circle. Thank you so much for being an amazing part of this growing community. Until next time, be kind to yourself and others.